Welcome to English Odyssey. Get ready, everyone, because this story will take you on an exciting adventure. Let the story begin. Donald Trump is the current president of the US. When he began his new time in office, he acted very quickly right away on his first day. And in the first week, he signed many important papers called executive orders. These orders gave new directions to the government. President Trump wanted to change many rules that were put in place by presidents before him. His main goal was to reduce the number of government rules and stop how they were enforced. He often said that these rules made it hard for businesses to work and grow, hurting the economy. So he gave orders to people working in different government agencies. He told them to stop making sure many existing regulations were followed. Strictly, this was a widespread stop to enforcement. It meant that in many parts of life, the government would not check as often or punish people and companies for not following certain rules. We saw early examples of this change happening fast in the area of immigration, which deals with people coming into the country. President Trump signed orders to make policies much tougher. He quickly ended some policies from the previous president that were less strict. He put in place stricter rules for people at the border and for those seeking safety in the US. Another area that changed fast was the environment. These are rules that help protect our nature, like keeping the air and water clean and dealing with climate change. President Trump signed orders to make many environmental rules weaker. For instance, he wanted to make it easier for companies to get and use oil and gas. This meant some rules designed to protect the environment were told to stop being enforced strongly. People across the country had very different feelings about these quick actions. Many business owners and some politicians who agreed with President Trump were very happy. They said these changes helped businesses by removing rules that cost money and made things difficult. They saw it as a way to make the economy stronger. But other people and groups were very worried. Groups that work to protect the environment were concerned about the future of our planet. The civil rights groups were worried about the changes to immigration and other rules that affect people's rights. Many people also started to talk about the president's power. They asked if it was right for a president to simply stop enforcing laws that the country's lawmakers, the Congress, had passed. These initial reactions showed a clear split in the country. These first actions by President Trump were just the start. They showed a new direction for the government, where reducing rules and stopping enforcement were key goals. It was a big shift from how the government worked. Before it led to many arguments and disagreements among people in politics and in the courts. This chapter is the beginning of this story, introducing the time when President Trump quickly began to change many government rules and how they were put into practice. 2 green rules go after the first day. Changes continued quickly. For environmental rules, President Donald Trump signed new orders. One major order was about state environmental laws. It said the federal government had more power than the states on these issues. The order told the Justice Department to find and sue states whose climate laws were seen as going too far. The plan was to help oil and gas development. The government told states to stop enforcing their rules that limit greenhouse gases. States like California and others quickly said they would fight this order in court. This created a conflict between the states and the federal government. Another important order changed rules about saving water. This order specifically targeted rules for shower heads. The old rule from past presidents limited water flow to 2.5 gallons each minute. This rule was put in place to save water and energy. President Trump often said he did not like this rule because the water pressure felt too low. He even joked he had to wait 15 minutes to get wet. The new order told the Department of Energy to remove the old rule. The White House called this effort "Make America's Showers Great Again." The idea was to quickly undo steps taken by the last 2 Democratic presidents to conserve water and energy, the department started working to change the rule fast. They did not follow the usual steps that allow the public to give comments. The government said they had a good cause to act quickly and skipped this step. The president also signed orders for 10 different government agencies. These agencies included the Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Energy, among others. The orders told them to review many existing rules about energy, the environment, mining and fuels. The goal was to sunset these rules. This means the rules would get automatic end dates. If an agency did not actively decide to keep a rule, it would stop being a rule. One order specifically said that every energy regulation should end by next year unless it was reapproved. These orders also allowed the agencies to stop fighting against new projects for oil and gas, like pipelines or drilling. The changes were happening very fast. Environmental lawyers did not like these changes and said they would sue to protect the old rules. Sometimes companies were given special permission to not follow rules, for example, rules about clean air or checking the environment before building. This happened when the government said there was an emergency. The government also used recent decisions from the Supreme Court. They said these court cases showed that some government rules were not legal. For example, one court case limited the power of the EPA. The government used this idea to quickly remove rules. An order told agencies they could repeal rules right away if they thought the rules were against the public interest. They used the good cause reason. Again, this allowed them to bypass the normal process where people can comment on rule changes. This was an unusual step to quickly undo many regulations without the standard public discussion. Legal experts said this tested how much power the president really has. 3 border changes fast on January 20th, 2025. President Donald Trump started his new time in office on his very first day. He signed many papers. These papers made big changes to the rules about people coming to the United States. He wanted to stop many rules from the presidents who were in office before him. These changes happened very fast, right at the beginning. One of the biggest changes was about sending people away from the US. President Trump made the rules much harder and faster. Before, there were rules that told officers not to arrest people in certain safe places like schools or churches. President Trump ended this rule right away. Now officers had more freedom to arrest people in many places, not just at the border. The new rules also made it very difficult for people to ask for protection in the US. This protection is called asylum. President Trump announced that people from some countries could not ask for asylum at all. This was a wide ban that stopped many people. It also became harder for people to enter the US through programs that helped people who needed help, like humanitarian programs. These programs provide a legal way to enter for safety. Another change was about sending people away faster if people were in the country without papers and they could not show that they had lived in the US legally for 2 years. The government wanted to send them away very quickly. This was part of making enforcement stronger at the border and inside the country. The goal was to increase the number of people sent away. President Trump also brought back some things he did. When he was president, the first time he said he would continue building the wall at the southern border with Mexico. He used a declaration from 2019 to start this work again, quickly. This showed he was serious about his promise for a wall. He also brought back limits on who could travel to the US. He announced an order to stop people from certain countries from coming. This ban was mainly for people from countries where most people are Muslim. He also talked about changing how children born in the US get citizenship if their parents do not have legal status. But some people who study the law said a president might not have the power to do this alone under the US Constitution. These quick and big changes made many people and groups upset across the country. Groups that worked to protect people's rights did not like the new rules at all. They said the rules were unfair and hurt people who needed help or had been living quietly in the US. Many states in the US also did not agree with President Trump's new rules on immigration. The leaders of these states and the civil rights groups started to fight the rules in court right away. They filed lawsuits against the federal government. They argued that President Trump's orders were against the law of the United States and the Constitution. For example, they said the orders did not respect people's right to a fair process under the law before being sent away or denied entry. A group called the ACLU quickly filed a lawsuit to help people who were trying to ask for asylum at the border. Several states also sued the government. They wanted to stop the rules that limited people coming as refugees and the rules about families being together in the US. These lawsuits created legal challenges to the new policies inside the government offices that handle immigration, like the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. Things were changing quickly because of the new orders. The people who worked there full-time were trying to understand the new rules and put them into practice. Some workers felt confused because the rules were so different from before. Some felt unhappy about the changes and the impact on people they were given. New instructions about who to focus on for arrests and sending away information that people saw inside the offices suggested that the focus was on removing many people. Some workers felt they had to follow the new orders, even if they were not sure if the orders were legal or fair. The new rules also caused problems for some programs that help people already in the US. A program for young people called DACA was changed a lot. It became harder for young people in this program to get permission to work or travel outside the US. This effectively limited the program. Also, the government said it would not help children from other countries in Central America who came alone in the same way as before. In the past, the government helped find places for these children to live safely while their cases were decided. But with the new, very strict approach, this help stopped reflecting a zero-tolerance stance. So the rules for the border and for people coming to the US changed very fast. Right at the start of President Trump's time back in office, these changes happened quickly and broadly affecting many different people and programs. These changes led to many legal fights and different opinions across the country about the right way to handle immigration for inside the agencies, inside the many government agencies. Things began to feel very different. Many people who worked there for years felt confused. They also felt sad or had low spirits. They were not sure about the new rules and what they should do every day. They had worked under different presidents, but this felt new and difficult in the agencies that work on immigration. Like Homeland Security and ICE officers received new orders. They were told to focus mainly on finding and removing immigrants who had committed crimes, but some private notes that people inside saw suggested that the orders were wider. These notes seemed to say that immigration officers could also target people who had permission to live in the US, but had not followed all immigration laws perfectly. Some officers who had been doing this job for a long time felt unsure about these new instructions. They thought maybe they were not right, but they knew they had to follow orders from their leaders. Several programs that helped people who needed help also slowed down or stopped. For example, the DACA program, which helps young people who came to the country as children, was changed. People in this program used to be able to get permission to work and sometimes travel outside the US and come back. But now the government stopped giving these travel permissions. The program became much smaller. Also, help for young children from Central America who arrived alone was affected in the past. The government helped find homes for these children. Now, this help was not given in the same way. The government said it had a very strict rule. Now, people whose job was to check if companies and others followed the rules, like inspectors and investigators in different departments, also felt pressure At the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that checks on banks and lenders, leaders told the staff to stop working on important legal cases against big companies. They were told not to start new investigations for a long time at the department that deals with transportation safety. There was talk about making it possible to punish inspectors who were too strict when checking if rules were followed. This made inspectors worry. Many workers across the government were worried about their jobs. They feared they could be punished or even fired if they continued to do their work in the old way, which meant making sure existing laws were followed strictly. Some workers said their requests to start checks, like looking into problems with disability payments, were stopped by their managers. It seemed like the government did not want its workers to enforce many rules anymore. Music. This created a difficult time for many people working inside these agencies. They were not sure how to do their jobs or if they could do them without problems. 5 business rules relax after changes for the environment and borders. President Donald Trump's government looked at business rules. Many people in business hoped for fewer rules. The new government started to make this happen. One important agency is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This agency works to protect people's money when they deal with banks and other companies that lend money. The source text says, this agency stopped many big court cases against large companies. This happened soon after a new person took charge of the agency. Reports said the agency dropped at least 5 major lawsuits. These cases were against companies like Capital One and Bank of America. People inside the agency were reportedly told not to start new cases for 3 years. This showed a big change in how the agency would work. One person said that the work of checking and enforcing rules at this agency became almost stopped. The changes for businesses were not just at one agency. New orders from the president aimed to cut many rules for all kinds of businesses. The source text mentions a plan to cut 2 old rules for every one new rule made. This was a big goal of the government to help with this work. A new office was created in the White House. It was called the Department of Government Efficiency. This office was put in charge of making sure agencies found rules. To remove agencies were given short times to suggest which rules should go away. The government also planned to change how it punished businesses that broke certain rules. A new plan was discussed to make it harder to bring criminal charges against businesses for some types of rule. Breaking the idea was to list which rule breaking could lead to criminal charges if a rule breaking was not on the list. Businesses might not face that kind of serious legal punishment. Supporters said this would help small businesses, but others worried it could mean less punishment for bad actions. The government also looked at rules that might stop businesses from competing. Agencies like the Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department were asked to find rules that seemed to hurt new companies or new ideas. They looked at rules in different industries like healthcare and energy. They also looked at rules about the price of medicines overall. There was a big change in how the government watched over businesses. The source text says that people who check rules in many agencies were quietly told to stop their work unless a case was very important or involved clear cheating. Legal companies that help businesses with rule problems reportedly saw less work. Many people in big companies and groups that support businesses were happy about the changes. They felt that agencies were not checking them as closely as before. One person said that agencies knew any new court case might be stopped by the top people in the government. 6 rights under review. President Trump made new rules about rights. In early 2025, on February 5th, he signed an order about school sports. This order said that transgender women and girls could not play in sports meant for females at schools that get money from the federal government. The order said this was based on Title IX, a law about education. It told the Department of Justice to stop giving money to schools that did not follow this rule. The NCAA, a large sports organization for colleges, said it would obey the order, but groups that work for civil rights did not agree. They quickly started lawsuits to try and stop the order from working. One state, Maine, said it would not follow the rule. Then in April, the Justice Department sued Maine. The federal government wanted Maine to obey the order. The leader of Maine, Governor Janet Mills, said the lawsuit showed the federal government was trying to force its ideas on states on April 23rd. President Trump signed another important order. It was called Restoring Equality of Opportunity and Meritocracy. This order changed how the government fights discrimination before the government could take action if a rule or practice caused unfair results for groups of people, even if no one planned for it to be unfair. This was known as desperate impact. The new order stopped this now to prove discrimination. You must show that someone meant to be unfair. Agencies like the Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, IEOC, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, were told to stop bringing new cases based on desperate impact. They also had to look at old cases and agreements. For example, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, stopped a case against a car dealership. The case said the dealership charged Black and Latino customers more money for extra services. Agency officials said they stopped the case because of the new order. People who teach law warned that stopping desperate impact cases removes a main way to fight unfair systems in jobs, housing, and education. Another major order from President Trump in January affected companies that work for the federal government. This order was named Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. It ended a rule from 1965 by President Johnson, Executive Order 11246. That old rule required federal contractors to take steps to ensure equal job chances for people from different backgrounds, often called affirmative action. The new order said that companies and universities that get federal contracts or money cannot have programs that promote diversity, fairness, or inclusion. DEI programs, this includes programs that people started voluntarily. This order also meant that the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, OFCCCCP, which checks equal job rules for contractors, would do very little work. Civil rights groups and 5 states quickly filed lawsuits against this order. In mid-April, a federal judge stopped the order from working across the country. For a time, the judge said that telling organizations they cannot have DEI programs likely violates their right to free speech under the First Amendment. Meanwhile, some law firms supported the government's view and said they would not do what they called illegal DEI discrimination work. These new orders, changing rules about rights, have quickly led to many legal challenges. Civil rights organizations in some states have started lawsuits in federal courts. They argue that President Trump's orders are against the law and the Constitution. The lawsuits target the ban on transgender athletes in sports, the change in how discrimination is judged, and the rule stopping diversity programs for government contractors. These cases are complex and will likely take a long time to finish. However, judges have already made some decisions. At least 2 federal judges have temporarily stopped parts of President Trump's orders. For example, a judge stopped the rule about diversity programs for contractors, saying it might violate free speech. Judges have also said that the way the administration made some changes without letting people comment first might be against the law. These legal battles show that the new rules on civil rights are being strongly fought in the courts. 7 people react leaders in government agencies found it hard to deal with the new rules. Some did not want to talk to reporters about it. Officials in the Energy and Interior departments did not say no to reports about not enforcing some rules. A person from EPA only gave general answers inside the agencies. Emails shared the president's orders down the chain. These emails were sometimes not clear. One memo from EPA in March told lawyers in different areas not to stop work that might stop energy production unless there was a big danger to people's health. Cases about cleaning up the environment started to happen less often at EPA. An old boss from EPA worried about this. He said it was wrong because everyone should follow the same rules, not just some people getting special treatment at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which helps people with money problems. Work almost stopped. After the president put a new person in charge, many workers were asked to leave. A judge stopped this for a short time, but the workers who stayed were told to stop working on their current cases. Senior bosses quietly told examiners and lawyers not to start new cases as someone high up in the government agreed. It felt like people at many agencies were just doing what they were told. This happened even where no official new rule had been written, yet this was seen at EPA, CFPB and other places. People in Congress had different ideas about the changes. Democrats and people who think like them said the president was breaking the law. They called it using power in a bad way. They said a president cannot just choose which laws to follow and which ones not to follow. They asked for meetings in Congress to talk about it. Republicans mostly liked the cuts to rules. People in the House of Representatives, who are strongly Republican, said it was good to control the government agencies. Some politicians who are not strongly for one party also thought it was good to make things easier for businesses to create jobs. But some Republicans were also careful. They said that skipping the usual rules, like with the order about companies working for the government and diversity programs, could cause legal problems. Later, these problems might stop the changes. Leaders in different states also reacted. The governors of Oregon and Washington quickly said they would go to court. Because of the order about state climate laws, the main lawyer for California went to court to stop the rule about sports for transgender athletes. He said it was not fair to students' rights. The state of Massachusetts also said it would go to court to stop the rule about companies working for the government not having diversity programs. Even states led by Republicans were careful. The main lawyers for Louisiana and Texas said they would only follow the president's orders if the law made them. They did not want to have expensive lawsuits against their states. People who work for the federal government felt uneasy behind the scenes. Reporters talked to many workers who did not want their names used. These workers said it felt stressful inside the agencies. People who work in different areas said they were not hired to help one political party. Some were sad that old rules about things like fairness for black people or safety for LGBTQ workers might now be stopped at EPA. One note shared inside said that following the new policy might mean stopping cases about pollution that were already happening. Lawyers at the Justice Department who work on civil rights cases were told to wait for new orders from the president's new political bosses. Reports said that dozens of officials across at least 7 agencies talked quietly about the sudden orders. For example, inspectors at the Transportation Department were worried a new idea might let bosses punish them. If they did their jobs too strongly, they told a newspaper that long-time workers feared being fired for doing what they were supposed to do. Many people in the agencies felt sad or worried. This was especially true where workers who investigate things did not trust their bosses who were chosen by the president. Not many people quit their jobs in public or spoke out openly against the orders, but one worker at Social Security filed a complaint inside the agency. She said that her requests to check if people were getting disability money correctly were stopped by people higher up. Most people who speak for the government agencies did not publicly say the orders were wrong. When they spoke to Congress, some new bosses said they were just changing where the government puts its effort. But they did not say that many rules were not being followed at all. People in the business world often talk quietly about the new orders, but they rarely say things in public. Groups that work for businesses thanked the government for reducing paperwork and rules. Groups that work for people who buy things are getting ready to use the courts to challenge the changes. 8. What happens next? After President Trump signed many new orders, people began to react in big ways. One main reaction was taking the government to court. Many different groups and even some states filed lawsuits. They said the new orders and the stop to enforcing some rules were not legal. These lawsuits covered many areas, like rules for the environment, rules for businesses, and rules about people's rights. Soon judges started to look at these cases. In some early decisions, judges decided to temporarily stop parts of President Trump's orders. For example, one judge stopped an order about programs that help different groups of people. Another judge stopped some changes at a government office that protects people who borrow money. The judges said that maybe the government did not follow the correct steps when making these changes. They also said the orders might give the president too much power. These court cases started a big discussion among people who study laws. They talked about how much power a president really has. Can a president choose which laws to enforce and which ones to ignore? Some experts say the president must enforce all laws that Congress makes. They say the president cannot just stop enforcing a law because he does not like it. People on different sides have strong opinions. Those who support the president's actions say these changes are good. They believe the old rules made things hard for businesses and stopped the economy from growing. They say stopping enforcement helps businesses and gives people more freedom. But people who do not support the president's actions are worried. They say stopping the enforcement of rules can hurt people. They worry about clean air and water. If environmental rules are not enforced, they worry about workers' safety and consumer protection. If business rules are ignored, they also worry that stopping anti-discrimination rules will harm people's rights. Because of all these lawsuits and disagreements, the future is not clear for many rules. Government workers are not sure what to do. Businesses are not sure which rules they must follow. This situation is like being in a state of waiting where nobody knows exactly what will happen next. With many laws and rules, what do you think is the biggest problem when rules are not clearly enforced? Hey, just a second before you go, if you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new story. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and see you next time.